Okay, we have wildland rec and fish and game information start. Well, I think we'll start with wildland rec first, page 16 in the packet. Good afternoon, Les. Good afternoon, Tom, or good morning.
Good morning. If I could just do a brief introduction for everybody, Madam Chair, a little brief history of where we're at in this particular issue that Lester has submitted before you. Council directed the staff to come up with solutions, recommendations to deal with the increased recreation on tribal lands, conflict over space for camping, other recreational uses, and increased enforcement compliance. So we generated a couple different documents and some recommended closed areas and some administrative items for your consideration. Council directed us to go out to the both elders groups to seek information from them, and we did that. We also attended numerous district meetings and provided information to the tribal membership. So what you have before you today that Lester submitted is a brief summary of one part of the, for the time sensitive part of this is the Ordinance 44D annual regulations. And so each fall, as I mentioned before, we bring forward any proposed changes, and our regulations need to be adopted and set in print and put through the all the processes that we do, so they become effective by March 1st of each year. We're at the very end of that time frame to be able to complete that right now. So proposed regulations in order to hit the Tribal Administrative Procedures Ordinance timeframes and get everything through our process, through our joint agreement with the state for bird hunting and fishing on the reservation and printing requirements. We need to probably seek immediately recommendations from council for proposed changes, at least for this upcoming year, hopefully today. We also have a series of administrative things that we've brought forward for council, and those are issues like Councilman Len Two-Teeth has brought forward, additional staffing, more wardens. There's items that we've talked about as far as increasing tribal member campsite development, things that we can do administratively that aren't under a time constraint as far as the regulations go. So council could take action on those things at any time, but briefly wanted to review those management actions that aren't part of the Ordinance 44D process. And both Lester and Dan are on, and they can talk about some of those that we have that would help. And then Lester can go through the 44D regulations for you. And then of course we could go into Dan's quarterly report, which is also very relevant because staffing to enforce the regulations is critical. And I think that was one of the first issues that came forward in this discussion this spring. So I'll turn it over to Dan and Lester to talk about some of the administrative things and then quickly go into the proposed changes.
All right, thank you, Tom. Can't seem to get my camera to work, or I don't know if it's working or not. Can you hear me though?
We can hear you. We can't see you.
Oh, here we go. Start my video. Keep clicking the button, but it doesn't seem to work. But okay, some of the administrative issues on whatever is decided. There's with the demand out there of recreation sites throughout the reservation and primarily in the backcountry areas up in the Jocko, in the Mission front, the high use areas. We're seem to be hitting capacity at certain times a year, primarily during the summer. And the I suppose any opportunities out there or options for administratively a wildland recreation program would be to um, do some improvements on the existing recreation sites that we have out there, the campgrounds, and increase the capacity out there to make more campsites and more restroom facilities out there on the existing sites. Or other options would be to create more campsites, campgrounds out there throughout the reservation, wherever we decide they can be, developing new sites in high use areas. We're talking about that. They seem to be the places where you can swim, flat water, like Twin Lakes and St. Mary's and Mission and McDonald are kind of the high demand areas. And but we're kind of limited on those spaces, opportunities out there reservation wide to create new sites at. But we can still create campgrounds around creeks and streams and other places up in the backcountry, and perhaps even discussing with our group having some down in the valley too. So they might help take pressure off those high use areas in the backcountry that the tribal members are using. So to increase the recreation sites and would also kind of require us to probably get some more staffing on to take care of the sites, and just the funding to build more picnic group shelters or single shelters and picnic tables and fire rings and concrete vault toilets. Those seem to be the administrative, again, demands on us that we would have. So I can pass it on to Dan and he can talk to you about his part on there.
Thanks, Lester. So with this proposal, obviously it takes people to enforce any regulations, and with the current staff that we have, is you start developing other sites, we obviously need more people to get out there and enforce and make sure people are in compliance with those regulations. And as I had proposed in the past at these different meetings, I always ask for 10 additional wardens on top of what I have, simply because we have other duties as well, as you know, with the bison range and bison hunting, and then you develop new sites, we need to have more guys out there on the ground. So, and then answering our daily calls with bears and animal human complaints. So in that, we my plan is to deploy these guys in areas that we're not really hitting now too hard, like lake and river patrols, and with the additional guys, we could assign people to the animal complaint calls while these other guys are still out there checking the tribal lands and those campsites, making sure that everyone is in compliance. With the 10 guys, it was also discussed that we could probably, even if we couldn't do 10 guys, maybe we could do, say, 8 guys or 6 guys, and then hire 4 or 2 seasonal employees that would be issued a vehicle where they can go out and they can do like the road closure system that we did last year, implementing that kind of a policy where they go to, say, McDonald Lake, and they just sit there for the day and they're checking to make sure people that are coming in are compliant, having the permits to be there and whatnot, or even sell permits to people so that everybody's in compliance. And that releases some of us not having to go to that location unless, of course, there's an incident where someone is being disgruntled with that employee, that seasonal employee. So those options we were kicking around depending on what was decided on additional wardens. Hiring 10 guys obviously is one of those things where we're limited to training because the police academy that we go to for training is a year out before we can even get a guy in there. So we thought maybe this seasonal employees would help alleviate some of that patrol areas so that everybody's still being checked for compliance. But really that part's unknown until we have decided on how many, if any, wardens could be hired to go out and check compliance on tribal lands, and then make that plan from there. I think that the gate guard, I really don't have a title for that position. I just call them gate guards because we do have a gate guard at the South Fork all summer. And actually we just closed that down October 30th. So I reference these roving patrols as gate guards too, because that's essentially what they are. They're not an enforcement off position. It's just a person who is at the beginning of or at the entrance of any properties, and then they're checked for making sure they have the license and tags or whatever to be on the property. So
I have a question.
yep.
Go ahead, Len.
Dan, how long does one have to attend the academy to get the certification?
It's 12 weeks.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan, I have a question. What is the reason that we use the state training? Is that in our agreement with the state, or why don't we use tribal training instead of the state training?
Well, first of all, the state training is the reason why we go through that is because we enforce the fish and bird regulations with the state. So we're cross-deputized with the state so that we can issue citations into state court. There's jurisdictional issues where non-members, if we cite them into tribal court, the tribal court don't have jurisdiction on a non-member and nothing really happens. So where we're at now, we agreed to go to Post Academy and receive our training there, just as Law and Order does. And we issue those citations in the jurisdictions they need to go to, because we have the fish and the bird regulations. Does that answer your question?
Any other questions?
So with as our part in Fish and Game was with Les's proposals was that we were requesting additional wardens to help with compliance and enforcing those regulations.
Yeah, I like the idea of temporary gate guards, like South Fork, for certain areas like the river and the mountain lakes. And until we can start to either figure out our own training or figure out maybe another location to send officers to go to training, or until the state beefs up their program to be able to start taking the additional individuals in so they can get trained. We have to do something.
and there's an outcry by the membership to get this done. So I think whatever we can do to get prepared for next summer, we need to do, and let the experts in the field do it. I know one time you had a concern about these gate people not having the experience, but you know, you have a little bit of time between now and then, and you guys are all experienced officers and can put them through a pretty good training on what to do and what not to do. And so I think just getting started right away is critically important. And it's not only in the summer and spring, fall months, it's, you know, it's all year round. It's the impact on our resources that I think we're all very, very concerned about, and not having access ourselves as tribal members. So anyway, that's my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Carol. So did we take action to authorize for the 10 additional officers?
Comment.
Go ahead, Len.
I'm trying to recollect the discussion, but I believe we asked the department to come back with a proposal and a budget, so we can get Rick involved in this and have him find the funding for us to do this, as I recall. But yes, I do believe, I mean, I do agree with Carol. The membership wants something done now. And I think we need to move forward with this. So thank you.
Madam Chair.
Tom?
Yes, in regard to actual increasing staffing, council has not given us any final direction. We did meet, at least I met with Rick and Ryan, and I believe Clayton and Rich, talking about the financing of any changes or any increased staffing that might be needed. Dan will go into this a little bit later, but of course you're aware of some of it, that we have some increased vacancies right now in our conservation officer program, and we expect a few more here come spring. And then we have this lag of being able to get officers into the academy, whether it's federal academy or state academy. And again, the state academy, what it does for us is it fulfills the need to have our officers be state game wardens and cite people into state court where there's criminal authority. And it's so much more of an enhanced opportunity for us. And it's for the fishing game, bird hunting fishing agreement, but also our AIS boat check stations. So we really need to be empowered to be able to bust the bad guy in whatever court that is appropriate. And for a lot of these folks, the most appropriate court is state court, whatever state court might be, where they have that jurisdiction. So it's been a very good tool for us, and we would strongly recommend that all of our officers continue to go to the state academy into the future. I don't think there's going to be anything that I see coming down from, unless something happens in Congress where they empower tribes to have criminal jurisdiction over non-federally recognized Indians, then that would be great. But I don't see that happening in the near term. We might be a case for that, as Brian Upton mentioned, for the bison range, but certainly something to consider. The issue of the doing what I call a bridge management for staffing is these the gate guard position really is, if they're adequately trained, as Carol mentioned, and Dan has mentioned, that does give us time to be able to increase our staffing, hire more wardens, get them to the academy. And so it does increase compliance. And if council, as we get into the presentation farther, creates more areas that are closed to non-member use and be able to enforce that, retrain the public or the new people here, those gate guard positions strategically located or rotating around can be a very good benefit to us in increasing the compliance to those closures, existing closures or regulations. So having the gate guard positions and increasing that can be very beneficial. Dan has provided the cost estimate for each warden staff that would be coming on board for the one-time equipment, man hours needed for costs, and the equipment that's needed for each position. So you're looking at around, like, Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, but about $120,000 per position as you start up. And of course, it goes down once their equipment's there. But then you're always faced with replacement of equipment. Vehicles, they put a lot of miles on their vehicles, and other equipment needs to be revised and updated as time goes on. But I don't have a number for you for the seasonal gate guards, but we can certainly do that real easy and provide that. But that seasonal gate guard thing is what we've always worried about, is that they're sheltered okay, that they have enough shelter for them when they're out there and we move people around, that they have a shelter that provides toilet facilities, heat, shelter from the environment, and that it's mobile. We don't have to worry about it being vandalized when we're not there. And so that's why we recommended before that in the gate guard positions, or even the wardens that might be mobile, we would want to have some type of sprinter van, small camper van that would be a mobile office and check station. And then they would have that shelter with them at all times. And that cost is it's similar to the startup cost of a game warden. But some of those vans can be near 100,000 or a little bit over 100,000, depends on how you equip them. But they last for quite a while. They're diesel motors that last for quite a while. That would be a cost for the check station, the mobile gate guard type person that we would have. That would be a one-time charge. With that, though, we could go directly into the regulation proposed changes, and Lester can review those. The closures, just a footnote, the closures that we've talked about before, this isn't anything new. We started doing this when we added on to the South Fork back in the 90s. Had a proposal to close a lot of the Jocko down. Lester dug that up the other day in 96. And council considered it and decided not to do it. Then we had the closures that we recommended again in 2004's plan. For a couple of years, council didn't recommend decide not to do any of those. And then, of course, it's always been closures are always really politically sensitive. And so through the last decade with water rights, there's been a lot of considerations for, making sure all our other issues are taken care of before we go into something that becomes highly controversial or conflicting. So again, a lot of this isn't conflicting a lot for the general membership. It's conflicting for everybody else. It's not an issue for a tribal member who has enhanced access to his own property, his or her own property. It becomes an issue for that local resident that's not a tribal member, and all of a sudden they don't get to go where they've had the privilege to go in the past. So it's always been a very political sensitive topic. So with that, we'll review what we have before you, and Lester can go through that.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So we've brought these issues up a few times with the tribal council. We've been to several district meetings and also to the Kootenai Elders Committee and the Salish Elders Committee. Just hearing the issues of overcrowding out there, not being able to find a space, campsites on your own property, and where you've been going for years and generations, and what they see out there as far as who else is out on the landscape. And there are more local people, as we know, moving into the area, and a lot of people from on the reservation and off the reservation are moving in and exploring our tribal backcountry and coming into these campsites, so making them difficult for our own tribal membership to find a place out there. So a couple potential options to address these would be to increase the annual conservation permit for non-residents. This is number one on the change options. to increase the annual conservation permit for non-residents of the reservation to $100 person, and or increase the yearly camping stamp for all fee categories to $100. That'd be one avenue that might decrease the demand out there. Another opportunity would be to prohibit overnight camping by non-members on tribally owned lands open to recreation permit access, with exception. And with that, we could potentially, they said, have some options of allowing non-member camping in the Mission Mountain Tribal Wilderness, just because that's so hard to patrol the backcountry, being up there and on all the trails and the campsites up there. Just a matter of access there. And also non-members floating on the river, where most of the float trips are basically, except for the first upper stretches, the rest of them are mostly overnight camping sections between access sites. And third option could be non-members. Of course, all these would require them to have the required licenses and permits, would be to allow non-members to accompany the tribal member for overnight camping. So that could be a tribal member with their descendant kids, or with other family or friends or guests along with them. So a tribal member basically showing ownership of their own tribal lands to be able to bring somebody with them who isn't a tribal member, and they could accompany them, and they would be basically responsible for them being permitted and their conduct that they on the tribal land. So I think what I was saying too, there potentially we don't have it listed there, but allowing a for descendants, maybe 2 additional groups that have potentially high use on tribal lands, or tribal descendants and tribal employees, non-member tribal employees. So those who are as an incentive for working with the tribe, or as a reward consideration, that there would be allowed to recreate on tribal lands if there was a complete closure out there over all the landscape out there. That tribal member tribal employees and tribal descendants. So the descendancy might require working with tribal enrollment, getting some type of, I don't know, identification cards or something that would be able to allow them on the landscape if we had complete closure, or allow them to camp in these areas where it is tribal members only. So. See my other sheet. So the number 4 would be potentially, if we just have a complete closure, either reservation-wide complete closure on tribal lands to allow access only to tribal members, or to designate certain areas on the tribal landscape, such as west reservation boundary mountain range, or the south reservation boundary range, the 9 Mile Divide. Those can be additional, like we had in the forest plan, we had different areas that could be in each landscape that would be tribal member use only. Or the Salish Range, for example, or perhaps the lower Flathead River or certain stretches of the river, or Jocko Canyon, or other locations. And they could also be site specific, like this is some of the concerns were with the Twin Lakes and St. Mary's, or for example, that those campsites, campgrounds in particular, can be tribal member only camping out there.
Lester, comment.
Yes.
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Lynn.
just wanted to bring another issue up was, I know the Elmo community wanted the Chief Cliff area completely closed. I know that the difficulty of that is there are some fee lands that are in the area. However, there are some areas that are kind of adjacent to Chief Cliff that kind of go into the big draw area where there are a lot of cultural sites that really are not publicly acknowledged that I know the Elmo community was concerned about, because there was a fee landowner up there that was renting out ATVs and people were accessing that particular area. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I know that's been brought up on numerous occasions from the Elmo community. So thank you.
I have a question. Do these changes, if we make any changes to the 44D, does that go through the public comment or our TAPO process?
Yes. Tom, can you answer that?
Yes, Madam Chair. Everything that you propose today is required to fall under our Ordinance 44D. And so any proposed changes, amendments, revisions to Ordinance 44D, the annual regulations that we're talking about today, require the 30-day public notice, public comment period. And then council can consider those comments, provide changes or adopt the proposed regulations. And then 30 days after that action, they become law. So the time period is, if you were to take action today to recommend a couple of changes or fee increases, for example, then we would be looking forward to it to become effective March 1st of 2022. But technically they become law 30 days after you do your final adoption of them, which would be, based on the time frame that we have, would be mid-December. That goes to the emergency regulations. They have you have emergency regulations for the Bison Range and the Safe Harbor Marsh now, and those automatically get thrown into proposed changes. I believe the last time we were in for the Bison Range, those might expire mid-December, so we probably have to take action to again adopt those emergency regulations until the final is done.
So if we made changes, we couldn't make them effective with the new permits March 1st?
That's typically what we do. Yes, that's exactly correct. It'll be all effective come March 1st.
Any questions from council? Discussion? Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to refresh the idea of having this permit displayed overtly when these people utilize their permits.
Madam Chair, Councilman Dawson, we are going to look into that the same way we do the day use pass at the Bison Range and the day use pass at Blue Bay. So we think we can provide something there. It's just that some of the vendors, it's difficult and they can purchase them online because most of our years and years ago, to increase compliance and effectiveness of the program, we joined the state automated licensing system that Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has. And so their vendors became our vendors and vice versa. And we didn't have to worry about bonding licensed vendors, or, that would take our licenses and run with the money. It provided an online platform for us. And so it was really a good thing to do. And I'm not quite sure how we would set that up, that people would print out a display that they could put in their car windshield. We have to do some work on that. Try to figure out how we can do that with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks.
Go ahead, Mike.
I do have one other question, Tom. I know we've talked about not being able to bring non-tribal people into tribal court. Could the permits be rewritten as contracts where under Montana v. US, that a contract would open the door for personal jurisdiction over non-members in tribal court? Contract relationship?
I'm not going to, Madam Chair, I'm not going to step into the legal venue here. I know that we've looked at least John Carter looked at the possibility for people to have a debt collector sick on them, because they're in violation basically of what you're saying. It's basically a personal contract. They sign that they're going to do this and that, and they violate it, and et cetera. So it's still all basically under, my understanding would be, even in that venue, was civil authority. And, in this particular case, unless that is criminal that you're mentioning, our best venue is criminal, we can't under state law. So I would leave that up to that discussion point with John Carter, John Harrison, Rhonda Sweeney, and not myself.
Discussion? Rhonda?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, did you want me to respond?
Sure.
Tom is absolutely correct. It's a civil kind of activity, and we couldn't we could try and research that, that's for sure. A financial contract, I don't know if people, once we made the change, if they knew the consequences about having to go into tribal court, if they would just quit complying and buying the permit. But we can check that out.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Len.
Thank you. I was thinking earlier about how we would be able to handle those situations with out-of-state people purchasing recreation permits, and I was just thinking about the similar concept what hotels do. When you check into a room, they hold on to your credit card for incidental damages. I think we had to look at requiring these out-of-state people to utilize their credit card to purchase. And if we find that they have damaged the property in some way, we would be able to collect damages from that. So, and I don't know if that could be done, but anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there and just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Bing?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Say, after what Rhonda just stated, I kind of think that there should be maybe a period here that council gets with Tom and maybe legal, to go over this issue, because it's not going to be a issue right where we can deal with things right now. You know, there's a lot of items in this report and whatnot that Tom got here that provided us that, you know, that we got to look at and make damn sure that we're doing things right here, because, you know, legalities is going to be an issue with this. So, you know, I just kind of think that we had to take a day or morning or whatever we need to do to go over this and get things on the right footprint here, so we can get this thing dealt with.
Council, do you guys want to have further discussion at the chairs meeting on Monday? Okay. So discuss the items or the packet, page 17 and 18 in the packet on Monday. Thank you.
Madam Chair, could we, Dan could do his quarterly report for you.
Hey, Dan, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to a quarterly report, I'll go through some of this fairly fast, but so the wardens had done in this quarter 317 security checks throughout patrolling the reservation. And in that time, they had 1,815 permit checks. They also conducted 648 or 27 days of AIS hours where a warden was assigned to the AIS inspection station, enforcing non-compliant motorists that failed to stop. The wardens had put in 251 traffic stops in that time and issued 56 citations for failing to stop, and then some other traffic violations during that time. They also spent 29 days in the newly acquired Bison Range, learning the area and just talking with folks about being compliant with the regulations that are in place there at the range. During those contacts, excuse me, during those contacts, the wardens had issued 133 citations to non-compliant outdoorsmen on tribal lands. In the packet on item mark 26 is a list of citations that were issued to various people utilizing our property. Also during that time, wardens sold 135 permits so that outdoorsmen were compliant, that maybe didn't understand. These are visitors that are new to the area, were sold a permit. They sold 49 conservation permits, 83 camping stamps or camping licenses, and 3 fishing licenses. We started doing that a couple of years ago just to help with compliance on our properties, and the wardens continue to do that. We just, as I said earlier, we just finished, we'll be finished with our South Fork Gate Guard. James Adams was doing that job for us this year. And for the most part, he was paid by fire because there was a fire in the Jocko all summer. So, but he'll be concluding that this week. Other than that, as far as the quarterly goes, that's kind of that in a nutshell. As you may or may not know, I had lost 2 employees. Both my sergeants had left to other job opportunities. So I have 2 vacancies, and I'm looking to promote officers in-house to those positions, plus hire the new wardens to replace my guys I promote. Also, I was approached by my older wardens. Warden Parker announced to me that he's looking at retirement in June of 22. And Warden Haynes called me Monday and announced that his plans were of April of 22 as well. Those guys had served 40 to 45 years as wardens, and they are going to be missed, especially since we're in this transition of the other two that had took employment elsewhere. So I'll be down by July, not counting any new hires. I'll be down to 5 certified officers covering all these things. And then I have 1 officer that is due to go to the academy in April. We hired Isaiah Asensio 6 months ago, but the post-certification training is a year out. So April is as soon as we can get him in. So come July, I will be down to 5 wardens that are fully certified to go out there and mingle with the people and issue citations. So part of that, I'll have to say now, is that, and we are working on pay adjustments. The reason why guys are leaving too is because they're offered money elsewhere, being paid more. So we're currently working on that. As a matter of fact, I'll be speaking with personnel on the hiring issue, all these hiring things and whatnot, so I can get that ball rolling. But we'll be discussing that pay equity with like law and order, since we're enforcement too. So with that, I would certainly try to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Dan? Go ahead, Martin.
Thank you. I guess what I was thinking about while you're talking about that, thank you, was the way that Law and Order is doing theirs, and a way to possibly kind of vet the people that you're hiring by doing these gate positions. You know, it's a good indication of whether or not they show up to work, how reliable, dependable, you know, how their soft skills are, rather than putting, you know, all this training and all this waiting on someone that may or may not work out. You know, interviews are great, but they don't show a lot of things. And so just as you guys were talking, and you know, this issue of, you know, of all the road attendants that we had during COVID, you know, a lot of them, I feel, were very good at their jobs and were pretty dedicated to this and protecting our woods. And a lot of them are outdoorsmen that, you know, just kind of took this on and we're pretty proud of it. You know, I know a lot of tribal members take pride in our wilderness and our woods, and would, you know, they do it on their own to protect our rivers and things like that. And so it's, you know, I think that, you know, a targeting or some kind of, you know, way to get them in the door. And, you know, I feel like for something like that, they could be trained up by, you know, the officers that have gone through the training, and at minimum, you know, maybe giving them, you know, radios and everything else to help that. But, you know, we definitely, you know, as our population is aging, we need to get, you know, more people in there that will give 40 years to these departments. You know, that's what we're losing. We're losing a lot of institutional knowledge, and I appreciate Officer Haynes and Officer Parker's service to the tribes, and they'll be missed. But, we need to get kind of our younger generations engaged in these, and it'd be a way to create jobs and then also, help you guys kind of identify potential candidates down the road. So thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Charmel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say thank you for the report. I love the way that it's presented and written, and just reading your report, Dan, is not only very informative, but somewhat entertaining. Thank you for the way that it's written. And I really encourage you to share as much of that with the public, maybe through the Charcusta if possible. I think it would help people understand so much more about what all of your officers engage in on a regular basis. And I'm super proud of your lineup of officers, and I'm sorry that some of them are moving on, and I understand there are various reasons why. I think Willie's going to enjoy himself at the Compliance with Shoreline Protection Office. I know he used to work there before, so and then those who are retiring, just congratulations to them. Anyway, thank you for the report. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
See some of our comments in the chat, if you guys can take those into consideration. We will discuss the proposed changes on Monday and get back to you all.
Madam Chair, if
Go
I
ahead,
may
Tom.
ask one question, and because I already, Dan was on vacation when we received one resignation from one of his great officers, Couture. So we started the advertisement of vacancies without him, and vetting that with him. But we started, we're always recruiting, and Martin's suggestions are great. But in that recruiting, the discussions I've had with certain people that I've been going on that are young folks, men and women, in their early 20s, they asked if they said, well, no, I won't be able to do it because it goes back to the whole the marijuana laws that have changed. They didn't think they would pass the drug test that's required. So they said, nah, I'm not gonna even bother with it. But I guess one question is that changed? Is your requirement for, I know there was something on council about revising some of the rules, but is marijuana still a drug testing item on the prerequisite for interviews?
Mike Wheeler, do you want to answer that?
Madam,
Chair, this is Mike Wheeler. I can answer that. That the drug testing requirements and personnel and for sensitive positions like driving positions, that hasn't changed. That is largely, in our opinion, up to council if they want to change that, but all that stuff has remained in place. So pre-hire drug tests is still a reality unless council wants to change that.
Right, Carol? I guess that's what I was gonna say. If we want to take a look at it, I have no problem. I think it's timely. And I have got a few comments about when are you gonna do this? So I think we should at least take a look at it, and I'm definitely in favor of it. Because I just feel there's so many people that do use it just for medical purposes, and I cannot see not allowing them to work in those situations. So anyway, that's where I'm at with it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Rhonda, did you have something?
Madam Chair, I can't hear you. We're ready to present when you're ready to go on. That's it.
Okay, I think we are done with the proposed recreation changes. Thank you, gentlemen. And we'll be in touch on Monday.
Thank you.
So we can move on into legal's presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have one matter in open session, but with the time delay, I don't know if Chelsea is available. Chelsea has a resolution to present. Are you there, Chelsea?
I am here. Yep. And I can go. Let me see if I can share my screen here. This is the resolution for council and the Kootenai. But you know what, Rhonda, I think probably might be best to do this in executive session as well. Oh, I think you're on mute, Rhonda.
May we switch to executive